just looking at this slide that you're getting to know and love, if you haven't kind of got to know and love it by now. Again, we're all, each of us has been trying to talk about the different kinds of impediments that face us as delivery organizations. And the one that I'm going to talk a little bit about now, which is a lot about, again, this is sort of getting into the management world, which obviously affects you guys a lot, is really looking about conflicting priorities. And this starts at the beginning. We all know that when requirements or planning goes bad, what ends up happening? Developers get slammed, they get over allocated, quality suffers, a whole lot of things can go wrong here. And I know that some of you guys are familiar with Visual Studio and some of the older products and the attempts and the improvements that have come in the collaboration with the work items and some of the reporting and all that. But we're going to get into a little bit more about that, what the 2012 has to offer kind of builds on that story and does it a little better. So let's talk about what conflicting priorities are. So this comes in a lot of different forms, changing requirements. Customer has a new idea, wants to inject it in the middle of a sprint or in the middle of a deliverable, change requests, things that go on, and it's hard to kind of get the visibility into what people are working on. The other thing about our business is we're a very knowledge-based industry. As a manager, I can't look out over all the guys who are working for me. If you guys are my dev team, I can't go, geez, that Jeff guy, he's not doing anything right now. What's he doing right now? Or Jeff's really busy. I don't really know that he's just pummeled right now. We don't visualize work very well. When I'm going to show off some of the solutions that Visual Studio has to kind of start to help me visualize the workload that different members of my team have so that I'm not unnecessarily overburdening a particular member of my team, and I don't get that, they're just surfing the web, geez, make them work harder type of management, which you sometimes see in the development world. What we're going to do is go through a bit of a demo on this, so I'm just going to go into the driver's seat, and Jeremy's going to look good for a while.
Just sort of stand over here like Dave did.
So just bear with me for a sec here. And
that's right.
Yeah, yes, just look good, inject a little humor. So I'm coming up on, I'm logging in as our Julia persona for today. This is a developer, but could have been any other member of the team. And what I wanted to show off is what is the new dashboard for the team in 2010. This is 2012 rather. This is something that I feel they've really improved. So this is the web access, and this is what the new landing page looks like based on the Scrum template. There are other templates in Visual Studio that are available as well, but they have the same general theme. And if we take a walk around this screen for just a moment, we can see that I could add a new product backlog item right away. I can add a task immediately from this screen and a bug. All the things you could have done in 2010. And again, you can get at additional work item types. But the difference is this is more of a planning center in a way. This is more, it gives me more access to relevant information right away that I, as a manager, can actually look at my team and see that, geez, okay, there's 10 changes in development, there's a bunch of builds going on. I can see that the last one was successful, but it ran long, so that might be an interesting conversation. How much backlog items? So I have a lot of things, and this is customizable, by the way. This team favorites here is really based on queries. It's all customizable, and you can build that out. But when we talk about planning, the first thing is the backlog. And this is one of the features that I really like, is that I talked about conflicting priorities and what can happen to a development team. Well, one of the common themes is somebody comes up with something new. So today, Rafe came up with another bright idea. So this could be a product backlog item of some import to our application. And I can, right here, because I've allowed up at the top here, you'll see that I have this add items on. So I can turn that off or I can turn it on. But if I turn it on, I'm allowing people to interact with my backlog. So I can add it up, and right now it shoves it into the backlog at the at the top here. And I can reprioritize it just by dragging and dropping and say, okay, this is actually the 5th most important thing to me. Or maybe, for just today's example, it is the most important thing to me. The other thing that I can note here is that, again, in the Scrum universe, a bug is a first-class citizen of the backlog. So a bug can also be created here very quickly. If something's come to my attention and I know that we have a major fire in Sector 5 or something like that, we'll just say. Just keep it silly and lighthearted. But I could create a bug work item, and again, I can prioritize it in my backlog very quickly. Whereas in 2010, if I wanted to go through this, I had to go through a stack ranking exercise manually. I didn't have a nice automated way to kind of drag and drop my priorities.
Yeah, usually your fastest way would be pull it into Excel, do a quick ranking, and throw it back into TFS.
Exactly. So this is one of those things where you're just, it's an important part. And as a developer, you want to know that you're focused, right? So you don't want things to interrupt what you're working on. So if I look at this Rafe and his bright ideas again, so I can open this up quickly. I can put an effort on it. I can assign it to somebody. So I'll let Brian be the victim today. And I can say that it is an approved backlog item, and I can save and close it. So now it's now a member of the backlog, but it's not allocated to a sprint. It's still part of the basic workload of all the backlog here. There's also another thing that I can do here, which I will talk about when I go into the sprint. But the other thing is there's this other really cool feature called forecasting. So you see these lovely little bars up at the top here? Well, they're basically a historical of Sprint 1, Sprint 2, and I'm now on Sprint 3. It's a real kind of an idea of the velocity of this team. So in the last sprint, they punched out 35 story points, we'll say. Now, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the term story points. A couple of people here, that's good. So one of the common ways to do story points is planning poker, if you've ever heard of it. Planning poker is a great way to kind of gain consensus over the relative effort of a piece of work, and that's really what this is showing. It's saying, this team's, if I look at this at a high level, I could say this team is probably on track to maybe somewhere around 40 is their average sprint speed, or a little bit less. If I go into forecasting on, it's now starting to project based on a forecasting velocity how many things it thinks I can put into a sprint. So what it's saying is, I can only do Rafe's bright idea in sprint 4. I don't have enough velocity. But if I upped it to, say, 30, it starts to look at the backlog and give me some kind of estimate of my projection of when things might land based on the current priority. So again, it's another great way. This is a really powerful tool. I can give you a real-world example. If you're delivering an agile project in a fixed fee environment where someone says, we've got a budget of $200,000, you're going to build this software, having a view like this is really important because it kind of knows maybe sprint 5 is where the money runs out, right? And now I know that I can have a conversation with the customer. If you like what we're doing and you like the quality of our work and you would like another sprint, it's going to cost X amount of effort from my team. So it's a very, I call it a civilized way to have a conversation about the planning rather than the chaos of project plans, which I find are out of date the minute they're created. So if we get out of the forecasting for a moment, if we go to a more sprint-focused view, you get into this view, which is, again, remember I talked a little bit about not seeing what's on people's plate. Well, I can see right now that based on this current sprint, in Sprint 3, which is happening right now, these guys are fairly tapped out. There's not a lot of room here to add more based on what they have. And if I want to look at how this is calculated, I only need to look at the capacity tab to be able to see that, well, these are the commitments that these team members have made. Now, in an agile team, I would expect them to be far more committed than this. So this is probably what more an agile team might look like. But in any case, if I put it back, if I just sort of revert it back to the original settings here, if I don't hit save, it doesn't keep it. But I can also add how many days off an individual is, so I can plan weekends in here or holidays and whatnot. So let's say Juliana has got a little bit more time. I'm going to add a little bit of time here. And we'll see that we've added some buffer immediately to her. And it also affects the sprint burn down, which I'll talk about in a second. So let's just jump back to the product backlog. We added this bright idea of Rafe's, and I'm always good. I got lots of bright ideas. And I'm going to add it to this sprint, this current sprint, which, again, in agile theory, this I'd be failing my sprint right now.
You'd be very
because
bad.
I'd be very bad manager doing that. But right now, as you can see, it's added to the sprint. But right now, it hasn't really affected the burn down yet because I haven't created any tasks for it. So this allows me to kind of show you what I call the real, this is the home run for me about the visualizing work. I dream of having TVs on the wall by development teams showing this sort of Kanban view of the universe, showing my teams what they're actually working on. So we added up this. Rafe had a bright idea. Well, let's add a task on this. So maybe somebody needs to do something for this. So maybe someone needs to build something. Someone needs to write some code. And we'll assign it to, let's see, we gave Julia a little bandwidth. Let's give it to her. And and maybe it's a fairly big task. Maybe it's 16 hours. So we're just gonna save this and close it. So now that starts to show up on this board. So I can now perhaps we've accepted that, and maybe Julia's gonna have this in her backlog now. So she's now got it in progress. She'll burn this down, and this will actually notice how my burn down chart has actually just changed. I have immediately seen an impact, what this has cost my team right away by adding this to my backlog. I am now not going to make my date. If all things being equal, I'm not going to make my date. The other thing is if I look at the view back at the backlog view and I come back to the sprint view, you'll see that, oh man, I've really overloaded Julia. Julia doesn't have that much bandwidth. There's no way that this is happening. So I might want to go back to the board, and I might want to update this, perhaps. You'll see that if Cameron here has finished his work on this phone, excuse me, I can just drag it to done, and notice that it zeroes the time. It immediately cuts the remaining work down to 0. So again, my burn down chart is starting to change. If other things started to happen, if time was going by, and things were starting to get done over time, and maybe Julia finishes this task, now my burn down chart probably looks still not great, but it's heading in the right direction. So the nice thing about the task board is it gives a very easy way to move across. You can't, and it doesn't really make much sense to be able to do this. You can't go up and down across the user story because then you'd be reallocating a task for one product backlog item to another, which doesn't make a lot of sense. You can also look at this view from a team member perspective. So I can see kind of right now Brian has 12 hours left, Cameron has 10, and again, it's just another view. But this task board view is very powerful in our industry because we're not working in factories. You can't see the software being built like a car can as it goes down the line. But if you can get an understanding of what's in progress and what's actually, for example, if you're a Kanban fan, you would already see a problem with this already. I've got a situation where Juliana's not really doing anything, but I got 2 items in Annie's queue. In Kanban, that's a non-starter. You never have more than one thing in progress on an individual at any one time. So depending on your delivery philosophy, you can leverage this very powerfully. This gives some good view. You still have the traditional kind of work item view. You can kind of come in here, build your own queries, and again, that sort of thing. So this is a really very powerful way for you to kind of get through all the different things that are available to you that are now in the web access. And again, these dashboards are really powerful. You have access again to request feedback here. So I don't have time to go into the feedback tool, and I imagine that's a very, very powerful feature. But being able to just immediately request feedback here and send a mail to your prospective end user and say, can you please take a look at this new thing we built? Can you give us some feedback on that? That's pretty powerful. You can still go to your SharePoint portal if you're integrated with SharePoint. You can still view reports. And you can manage team members. But the one thing that's cool here is you can manage your iterations here. In Scrum in Visual Studio 2010, we needed a special work item to kind of solve this basic problem, which was how to give an iteration a date range so that you could understand, well, what sprint am I in right now? Now it has a whole system set up so I can come in here and I can click on any one of these sprints and I can say, no, it's actually going to start on the 12th. And so now I have my sprint like the 3-day sprint probably wouldn't be very good. I'd probably get protested at. But that's the general gist of what's available to you, and you can add new iterations. It gives you a lot, and you can configure your areas from here. And this is stuff that was, in the old version, not as easy to get at. I mean, you could still get at it through the web access, but it wasn't as in your face and as well organized. Yes, Adam?
Ray, I have a really question I'm wondering about. Does this only work for Scrum?
No, it does not. Thank you for asking that question. So this demo today is based off the Scrum 2.0 template in Visual Studio, but I can tell you it works just fine with the MSF Agile, the Rafe's special process, and just about anything else you might think of. The key is here is everything you see here are basic concepts that work in any kind of. So viewing a backlog is just viewing. It's just a query, really. And so viewing the backlog for CMMI is going to view all the requirements. If you view it in MSF Agile, it'll be the user stories. So overall, this helps. So how does it help solve our sort of conflict scenario? Well, again, by being able to see and assess the impact of the change so quickly, and helping a planner like a project manager or whoever might be playing the role in your organization, a dev lead who might be organizing a sprint effort, this is a very fast way for them to visually see the impact of what's about to happen and what the work is going to mean. And hey, do I have capacity in this sprint to be able to fix these problems, or do I not? So that's for me, this is why was a huge win in 2012. And I think if there's any, from the I'm telling you, if your managers could see this, I think that they would be pretty excited. So I'm just going to close out of this for a second and come back to our PowerPoint. So we looked at we looked at that. So we looked at what the backlog and what the task board looks like. And again, this is really about visualizing the work and being able to see that Jeff's quite busy right now, and I shouldn't give him anything more to do. But so, when we come back to the next sort of impediment that we want to talk about, it's kind of loss of focus. So this is probably going to be a little bit more interesting to you guys if you're not in a management chair like I am, because this is a little bit more tactical, a little bit more lower level about what they have done in Visual Studio to kind of help you guys on the ground and how you work, especially if you're developers. And from what I've seen from the hands going up and down today, a lot of you guys are in that role. So again, loss of focus. So what does loss of focus mean? Well, I mean, obviously, every time someone tells you to park something and move on to something else, or you need to get at something, or you need to get at information, or anytime it disrupts your flow, there's a cost to that. Context switching is a term I'm sure you're all familiar with, and it is something that really slows us down in the mental space, because knowledge work is about momentum, even more so than physical work. So every time we lose momentum, we pay a price. Even as simple as I'm up here speaking, someone asks me a totally unrelated question about, are we going to have NHL hockey this year? And immediately my mind is off to something else. So one of the things that they did in Visual Studio was to try to redesign the Team Explorer to make the user experience to be a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more browser-like, and to provide some features for the developer to give you this context of what am I working on, what am I not working on, and so on. And Jeremy's going to go into some things, but I'm going to go into one right now that's just a demo quickly right now that's just going to show you guys a little bit about what this whole My Work thing is, and what that new feature is, and kind of what it looks like in real time. You've seen it. People have been touching it as part of the other demos, but they hit it and they move on really quickly, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it, and then Jeremy's going to go into a bit more detail. So I'll jump into that one right now, and if you'll bear with me for a moment, hiding behind the desk here. Okay, so again, I'll jump back to my Julia session here. I'll make sure this is Julia's. Nope, actually I'm in the wrong window. How about that? I think so. Okay, so what we're really talking about here is this whole new look and feel of the Team Explorer. and a little bit about my work. So one of the things that they've done now with this My Work is to be able to see some other things that are going on here. You can see that there are work items that are already associated to me in all iterations. I could filter this down to just say, give me the stuff that's in the current iteration. Well, obviously these things are still assigned to that, but if this would get filtered down to say, okay, just give me the work that I need to be interested in right now. But right now I have nothing in progress. I'm not working on anything in this particular example, so I can grab one of these items and just drop it in here. And now, for all work that I do from this point forward as a developer, and I'm not going to go too much deeper into this part just yet because Jeremy's going to actually go into some real world examples to show a little bit more of this in action, and I'll explore the rest of the Team Explorer for you now. But the real powerful thing about this is now you're going to start doing your development work, and you're not going to have to go, okay, associate to which work item again, which query. So you can set up your own queries in here. You can define, you can open up the query that you've used. You can actually go in and edit it. You can see how it actually came to decide that you're in the current iteration. So if you want to tweak this query to look for some different kind of specific work item, like for example, when Dave and Max were up here, they were talking a lot about the whole DevOps thing. And what if you want to go look for actually outages or things that are coming in? I can't remember the work item type, escaped me, but that System Center puts in. Maybe you want to go look for those. Maybe that's your job. Maybe you're the guy that's supposed to respond to those things. So I'm going to go back, and again, you see that it has this concept of home. So I can jump back out of that, and I can request a code review, which is Jeremy's going to talk a little bit more about. And I can go into this standard work item view, but now the view has changed a little bit because I can actually see anything that's a team favorite, I get summary counts on. So I can see kind of an overview of what the product backlog looks like. Oh, I see that one's approved and 10 that are new. I see that there are 20 things in the backlog that are considered done. I can go in here just like before, and I can create my own queries. All the things that were there before, but again, you have that Internet Explorer type feel where I can hit the back and the forward buttons, and I can kind of really get through that. I can go into builds, and this was the thing that blew up on me earlier, but it looks like it's working. So it's, I can, just like was shown earlier, I can see all the build definitions here. I can, as was shown earlier by the gentleman for sale, I forget the name, he was showing off how to actually create a build definition, and that's where you would go in here. But again, I can see what's going on because I can get access to the builds. I can take action from here. I can go to the build controllers if I wish. I can come up here and see that I have a controller and an agent. It allows me to get at information that I may or may not need to do my job well very quickly. Again, reports. I can get to the SQL Server reporting server. I can see the reports just like we used to see before. Well, this is, and so it still has, if you've built custom reports in your custom template, if you happen to have one in your current version, you're still going to see them here. So you can see this is a Scrum template, so these are the basic Scrum reports. And you can actually jump right to the reporting site if you want. Again, hit the back, docs, you can hit the web access, and again, just like you had in the web access, you have a little bit an additional things through the Team Explorer here. Again, this was all available with a right click in the old Team Explorer, but now they've presented it in a much cleaner way. So getting at the things you need, like setting your source control rules, your process template management, anything at the collection level if you're an administrator, and if you're someone who's just wants to look at setting up more iterations, more areas, setting up alerts for your project. These are things that you can do. You can create your own alerts, and it gives you, again, it lets you do it through the web access. So really what we wanted to show, or what the summary of what I'm showing here is that, again, in the effort of removing impediments and making that work a little bit easier and keeping focus, it's much easier to do so with the way that they've structured the Team Explorer now. So I feel like I've been a while now. I don't do on the testing chair and the development chair doing as much of this, and it works just as good for testers, like a test developer like I used to be. I would have loved to have this stuff so that I could have my test case that I'm interested in and automating and having it sitting in my current work queue, and I'm writing those scripts and I'm associating it with that. And again, you can see my burn down with the rest of the team. It's not just about developers. It's about tracking the work of all the team members and seeing what everybody needs to do to get it done. So I'm just going to hand it back over to Jeremy here, or I'm going to jump over to the PowerPoint, sorry, and then let Jeremy have a go at.
How many people in 2010 and earlier versions ever used the web access? Because I just. Not happily, exactly. It was just sort of a clunky version to do what you could do in Visual Studio a lot better. It's a lot different now. They've done it's a really nice interface.
Yeah.
But I will say the first time I looked at that Team Explorer, I was just like, I don't know where anything is. It took me a little while. It's very different, but it looks good.
It is a very different principle, but again, it takes that more web approach, that back, forward, move around, get to home. So. Now I'm going to go stand over and I'm going to let Jeremy.
You go be Dave.
I'm going to go be Dave.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that another point where you lose focus is when you get disconnected from TFS. You're on a plane, you're on the GO train home, and I am going to talk about that, Carlos. And you lose the connection to TFS, and you've got to bring it back. You've done some work, and you need to bring it back in line. I don't know if any of you ever tried to do this with Visual Studio 2005, but I was on a project with Carlos over here and another fellow named Glenn, can be less than the happiest person in the world at times. And Carlos would take the GO train home, and he'd work on his code in 2005 on the GO train home. He'd work on the GO train back into work, because he is that committed. And he'd come back in, and he'd put his changes back into source control. And then at a certain point, you'd hear Glenn smashing his monitor with his keyboard because nothing worked anymore. It was because the changes did not come in nicely in Visual Studio 2005. Now I'm going to admit some ignorance here. I know they improved it by 2010. I'm not sure whether the improvement came in 2008 or 2010. You got that work offline mode, and it checked your code when you were bringing it back online. Was it 2010? Thank you. And now we've got a better integration of the offline and online modes. We still didn't have quite the seamless file-based and source control experience that we wanted. So this is something that we have addressed with 2012. We have this concept of local workspaces. Now, have people worked with Subversion or Git before? Anyone? A lot of times when I'm working with someone who's coming in from that world, the first thing that I hear about is, well, with Subversion, I don't need to do all this mapping. Well, with Subversion, I don't need to do all this. I've got access to source control from the file system, similar to what you get in the Power Tools. And what we'll see here in the demo is that we're bringing a lot of that now into the TFS experience. The local workspaces is going to really help things out when it comes to working, if I can find everything here, in a more disconnected mode. So let's see, what should we do here? Let's just close everything up. And let's jump over to source control. And let's open, say, dev, the call center. Let's open up the solution here. And go over to Solution Explorer and open up web. And of course, we've got the little glyphs with the padlocks all over the place here. And so, we're connected to source control. Everything's looking fine. Open up the content. Have anyone noticed this with 2012? This preview tab. The first few times I saw this, it drove me absolutely crazy because I was like, why is that opening? I didn't open that. Oh, I accidentally clicked on a thing. It's actually really cool once you understand what it's there for, because now I can actually keyboard through these various files and just open them without, just a quick preview idea of what's going on there. So don't be afraid if you see that happen. It's as designed. And so we make a little change on something here, and we can see, we get the check mark. We've checked it out. No surprises. Nothing crazy going on here yet. But now let's say I'm Carlos. I'm getting on the GO train. So, am I working as the wrong person?
Were you trying to be right now, Cameron, or?
I'm trying to be Julia.
Yeah, you're on Julia right now.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're in Cameron. Okay.
I'm going to do something. I'm going to back away. Where's my undo? I'll just check it in.
So just go to desktop. Hit escape. Log in as Cameron or Julia. Sorry.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. And once again, back to Solution Explorer. I've got it open. Get that full calendar, CSS, and
Just double check that, Jerry. I'm wondering if it's logging you as Cameron again because you got the same screen. Yeah, so just switch.
your shortcuts didn't work.
That's right. It's my fault. See, this is why you never trust the bot. So it's probably the login on the RDP thing. It probably changed the login. So just go back to the desktop, right-click on Login as Julia. And just go Properties. Or no, cancel out of that again. Just go.
How about I
edit.
just open it?
Right-click Edit. Or
You know what?
Or switch user.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would do it. Always blame the boss. It makes it easier.
That's right. It's not working.
That's right. That's right. I think you're still Cameron.
Oh my God.
I think it set them all. So just go to. See, it's always good. You got to have a demo problem somewhere. Now don't touch the server. Okay, sure you can do this.
Do it this way.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Okay, so we got Visual Studio here, and let's go back to the view that we want. Okay, just do a quick get latest because I did check in those changes. And here. Okay, so now moving right along, let's just undo the change that we'd done before. And again, the checkout is complete. So what we want to do now is we want to shut down source control to make it look like, we're working disconnected. So I'm just going to go in here, and we're going to turn off the website, the web services, that will basically prevent Visual Studio from talking to TFS, giving it the offline feel. So if we just refresh source control here and wait a couple seconds, we'll see that we're disconnected. So now we're in a fully disconnected environment. We're no longer talking to our source control system. Well, what can I do in this case? Well, let's take a look at some of the neat things that we get with local workspaces. Let's just open this folder from File Explorer. And I'm going to add a text file here. Let's call it test. And I'm going to open this sites file with, just with Notepad, just in the file system. I'm going to change the color to red. And when I save this, anyone who's worked with Visual Studio and TFS in the past knows immediately I'll get an error. I'll get a problem because this file's read-only, and Notepad can't just save a read-only file like that, but now it can. I just did a save. I'll do it again because I did it sneaky with the keyboard. No problem. I close it, no problem. And here's something that the first time I saw this, I thought, that's really cool. Hey, look, that's site CSS checked out. Visual Studio. Just in the background, behind the scenes, I did all that with Notepad, and it just checked it out. So again, you're getting more of that kind of integration with the file system that you'd see with a Git or Subversion, and it's just built right in. We've got the local workspaces. We're working disconnected, but it seems like we're still connected. We've got that feeling that I'm still working in source control. I'm still working in that continuous environment, even though I'm fully disconnected. It's at the application level. Like, so it is being stored like as a local workspace. It is being handled by Visual Studio. So let's just jump back to the Team Explorer, and let's take a look at my pending changes. So, we get an error. Imagine that. It's disconnected. I get an error. So let's just start it up again. So we're reconnecting to TFS. Let's refresh over here. And look at that. It just comes right back. Now down here I see the included changes of the two that I made, the one through Visual Studio, the one with Notepad. And then what's really neat is it's got an excluded change that it's detecting. Remember I made that little test.txt file and just threw that in the background? Well, if I look at the detected changes, it noticed that in the workspace, so in the concept of the workspace that TFS has mapped through Visual Studio, it picked up that file and it knows that it's there. So I can pick that file and I can promote it, and that basically now makes it a part of the included changes. So we now have this notion of these 3 files that are available for check-in as part of the pending changes, and I can check them in. Obviously, when I was disconnected, that check-in button was disabled, but now that I'm all connected and everything, it's enabled. So the level of integration for being offline and online just sort of took another step forward. 2010 took it a long way. It analyzed what was different. It helped to merge everything back together. And now we've just taken it a step further. It's like I was never disconnected for the most part. Like I could see where my changes were. I could see the files that were added. Everything was there for me, even though I was fully disconnected. So that's a little bit. Anyone have any questions on the local workspaces? It's a pretty nice little feature that was put in for 2012. We're going to keep talking about loss of focus. It's a big deal for the teamwork, the collaboration space that we have. Code changes not being validated effectively. Everyone knows that some level of code review is an essential part of the development process. Whether you go full-bore agile and you're doing paired programming and you're nonstop code reviewing, or whether it's part of sort of a more traditional approach in which development leads are doing code reviews, or you'd schedule peered reviews. Whatever they are, everyone will admit that code reviews are an important part of development. But at the same time, they're not happening. There's not the tooling involved. There's not been the tooling involved to really promote that. And so we end up with a lot of duplicated code, rework, low quality, all the things that we're trying to fight against with proper code reviews.
And a lot, just to interject as well, a lot of, I don't know how many of you guys have come up with a sort of your own way to track code reviews, like a custom work item type or something like that. A lot of times that's the approach that a lot of our customers have tried to take to solve this particular problem, but it always ends up, it's still like you feel like you're going out of your way a little bit to try to track it, and it can sometimes get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, so they're dropped a lot, and we need to make sure that we have the proper tooling necessary to solve this problem. We want something that's integrated in our environment, and we're not doing, again, that context switching. We want to stay focused on our work, and we want everything to come together for us. We also want to be able to compare the code. We want to be able to see what those changes were effectively, and we want to be able to know what the change was and to understand whether the change was good or not. So without further ado, we'll jump into the next thing, which will be code review and code comparison.
And I promise you I didn't screw this up.
Okay, so we're back in as Julia, the developer, and we are going to see something else. We're going to start off with a little bit of a slightly different demo, And we're going to take a look at something that Rafe glossed over because he knew I was going to talk about it, so he didn't want to jump all over it. We're going to talk a little bit about suspending work as well. So let me just find where I need to be. Okay, so currently we have some in-progress work. We know we've got one ad, we've got 2 edits all around that. Let's say as a part of that, we jump over to Solution Explorer, and as part of our work, we were working on a controller. We're trying to track down a bug. We're working on the home controller. Since we're doing a bit of bug tracking, we've got a breakpoint set in our home controller. We've opened up our immediates window in order to help us with the debugging process. So we've got all this going on. We're set up. We're about to start into work when the boss comes along and says, stop all work on that immediately. There is a bug that you need to fix. Okay, well, I've got all this set up. I'm in progress on stuff, but I don't want to, the traditional answer has been, I'm going to shelve this. I create a shelf set with my changes, and then I can at least revert my source code back. Well, in its way, you can think of suspend as shelf on steroids, and we'll see that in a minute. So I'm just going to go in, and I'm going to suspend all these changes, and it's going to go off and do things and come back, and now here's where I am. So I'm just going to reset everything. I'm going to close all the documents. I'm going to kill all my breakpoints, and I'm going to revert my window to its default state, my Windows environment. So I've got a super clean look at what Visual Studio would look at, all those things that I had before thrown out the window. And now it's time for me to take a look at what the boss said I need to fix. So we'll go back over to Team Explorer, and he said something about Canada and Canadian. So let's just type in Canadian there, and let's see. Well, I found 3 things with Canadian. This is really cool. How to find work items with a search capability. I type in Canadian. It's going to search all the work items under the context of the search, which in this case is the team project I'm in, and all work items. And it's going to check the title, the description, and steps to reproduce. So as long as you know in one of those 3 places a keyword is, type it in there, it'll bring you the work item. So I've got 3. Now that I look at them, I recognize that it's this bug here. They're not, the Canadian addresses aren't displaying properly. Okay, well, let's take a look at this work item. Let's take a look at the tasks. Okay, now I remember what it is. Our ability to display Canadian postal codes is wrong. We're just handling American zip codes. So I'm just going to quickly create a new task, update regex to handle Canadian postal codes. And I'm a programmer, so my punctuation's bad. And so there it is, and we're going to assign that to Julia. Save that. So if I go back to Julia's home.
And you'd put some remaining work in there so the boss knows how much time you need.
I'm going to get it done before he notices. So if I come back here, I can see now this is part of my available work items. And Rafe showed you how to drag. The other option is you right-click and you can add to in progress. And so now it's in my in-progress work. And so now let's take a look at what I need to do to actually fix this. And if we go up to the DAL in the models and look at the address CS, hey, look, someone else did this. They said it was complicated. I say it's Canadian. Maybe it's both. So we switch this over. So now we have the regular expression that handles Canadian postal codes as well as zip codes. And we can save that. And I got to make sure. Part of our policy is we're going to go through a code review with such changes as this. So I need to go over here, and I'm going to request a review on that file. So let's just expand that a little bit. I need to add who the reviewer or reviewers are going to be. I can see I've got Cameron here. And so I'm going to pick Cameron as my reviewer, and I'm going to ask him, please review my regex change for Canadian postal codes. And so here you can see you can have multiple reviewers. You make a comment against the request, and then you can submit the request. And off it goes. And now you can see I've got this code review in here to handle the update for Canadian postal codes. And now we're going to log in as Cameron, which I've got like 5 sessions open as him. Which I
He's just anyone, yeah. Too many windows.
There we go. Okay, so now I'm just going to double check. Yes, I am Cameron. So if I go over to my Team Explorer now, and I take a look at my home and my work, I should see that I've got some requests for code review. So as you can see, we practiced this before. So if I open up this request, so I'm seeing a fairly similar view to what Julie had. And here we can see the reviewers. I can add reviewer if I want. Perhaps this is a very complex change. We need a couple of eyes on it. I can add additional reviewers and send them the request as well. I can see what Julia had to write. Please take a look at this, okay? And I can see the files that were involved in this change, which is pretty cool. So at this point, I'm ready to jump, at this point, my first action as a reviewer is to either accept or decline this request, because if I'm not in a position to take this on, I should let Julia know so that she can move to somebody else to get it done. So in this case, I've got the time to, so we will accept it. So we've accepted the code review. Now let's take a look at what Julia did. So here's something that's pretty cool. We've got a side-by-side code comparison tool. We can see exactly what Julia did here. We can see that there was an old regular expression that simply handled, the lower one, simply handled the American zip code system. And then we have the more complicated one on top, which handles both the American zip code as well as Canadian postal code systems. So that's pretty cool. I take a look at this as Cameron. You know what? I think that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to quickly make a reply, or make a comment, or sorry, make a reply to Julia's and say, yeah, that looks good. And save that comment in. So now we get a nice little historical trail of the code reviews. And this is also really neat. I'm going to highlight the word zip, and I'm going to add a comment to it, because it's not just a zip code anymore. Zip code's just a specialty case for a postal code, so why don't we just, we probably should refactor this and rename the variable more appropriately. And so perhaps consider renaming the zip property to postal code. And we all know with hedged language like perhaps consider, it's not going to get done. So we save that comment. So these comments are saved, but you'll notice that both of them have this little unsent line here. That means the comments are still in my field of purview as Cameron. But I want Julia to get these comments so she can start working on this. I may still have some more work to do, so I'm just going to go ahead and send the comments. So now all these comments have been sent back to her. I'm still reviewing, but she can start looking at my comments, my feedback, and start working on that right away. She doesn't have to wait until my review process is finished. She's getting the feedback immediately that something, perhaps should be done. So other than that, I take a look around. I think everything's looking pretty good. So I'm just actually going to save and finish and say, hey, that looks pretty good. So I'm all done here now. And I can jump back into the world according to Julia and refresh over here and open up this code review task again. And now I'm basically seeing I've gotten this feedback from Cameron. He says that it looks good. He's made a little suggestion down here, but again, he's hedged his language so much I'm not going to bother. I've got to get back to the work I was doing before it was interrupted, so we'll keep that in the review, and maybe we'll get to that at some point. So everything's fine there. And so I'm just going to close the review as done. Say it's completed. I've got this work right now all here, so I'm just going to I'm going to go and check in the changes for this. And so it's going to check in the code review, it's going to check in the code, and so we updated the regex to handle Canadian postal codes. And check in. And look at that, I got all my related work items and everything. I didn't have to search for them. It was great. Okay, so now where was I? Oh yeah, I had suspended work. So let's go back to my home page and my work. And there's my suspended work. So let's go grab that. Let's not minimize that. Let's resume. Hey, look. That breakpoint was gone. It's back again. I deleted that. And my immediates window came back. All of that came back with the resuming off of suspension. So it's remembering more than just the state of the code. It's more than just a shelf set. It's a shelf set plus the state of your IDE at the time of suspension. So that's pretty cool. Like, it just pulled all of that back after it was gone. So I'm right back ready to debug this home controller that I left off before the boss interrupted me.
Before I interrupted, ruined everything. Yeah, it's a very big thing. And I mean, from my perspective, that type of context switching, I can literally measure the impact on my development teams when that stuff is going on a lot. In the old Visual Studio, they'd have to get back, or maybe they'd snapshot a VM, or there was lots of strategies they would try to do this, but nothing like that. So, just we might as well.
Hey,
I'll take
I've
this
seen
back.
that before.
Yeah, never seen this before. Go ahead, sir.
So as you mentioned, that little code review bit of feedback likely isn't going to get done. Is there a way to report on things that have been suggested like that, and it's been selected in the code and comment added to say this is now done or not done?
I'd have to get back to you on that. Now, it did save it. You'll see that part of that change set saved all of the pieces of that code review. So whether there's actually a report to see incomplete code review, incomplete suggestions, I'd have to get back to you, Denny.
So code reviews are this special kind of work item that's sort of hidden away, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just a work item behind the scenes, but it doesn't show up under your new work items. So any kind of query that you could do on work items.
Yeah.
Any kind of query that you could. What I was saying was, work items and feedback requests and those kinds of things are just work items in TFS, but they're kind of special ones that are hidden away. So when you go new work item, they don't show up in that list. But you could create a work item query that just says, show me all the code reviews that are in this particular state, or have, this in whatever field you want.
So if Julia would have completed that
Yep.
suggestion, can she say, yes, I've completed the suggestion as a state, or is it just...
If Julia could have completed that code change, could she have set that bit of feedback to, yes, I've completed this as a state?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull that back. Might be... So here it is. It's got a little checkbox here to say that this item is done.
Yeah, so
So.
she can say, I mean, there's a number of different strategies you could take, right? I mean, if you're very interested in, maybe that is a very big ask. Maybe that's like rewriting an entire key stored procedure that the whole app uses or something. That you might want to hang a task off the code review and say, hey, there's another 20 hours work to kill that technical debt that's built up because we did something not as smart as maybe we should have in the first place. Tracking that might be important because it affects the whole team that's trying to get to their deadline, right? So, so just to wrap all this up a little bit for you guys, we thought we'd, everybody today came up here and talked a little bit about specific impediments and how to try to tighten this circle, really, which is, in the universe, we used to always fuss over, requirements and, what the business wants and what the development team wants to deliver. They're usually not in line or they're not talking. And And we talked a little bit about that, and that's kind of what our talk was a little bit about. It was sort of bridging that sort of requirements into the development flow, and what happens when you put some effort and focus on some of those key impediments. Dave and Max talked a little bit about the sort of ops end of the spectrum. We had talks about the testing and some of the other things, and all these things have value. And what I thought would be useful is to tell you guys just a very quick story about something that we did. So we worked for a client, and we built this thing called the deployment framework. It was really meant to shatter the dev to ops. It was one specific impediment that they had, which was basically deploying code into production. Content as well, right?
Yeah.
And so in their old system, they were able to accomplish about 26 deployments a year. That's based on our assessments, is what they did. And they lost a lot of time waiting for approvals. They were working a lot of extra hours, and this was tough. But when we put this in, we were able to now scale them up to where they could do 3,900 deployments a year. And they were doing 15 on day on an average. They were running any time, and they could automatically hit these quick rollbacks. And that is really key with production IT teams. If something goes wrong, they want to know you can get back to the old state as fast as possible so that you can troubleshoot in calm rather than, oh, the building's on fire and you're writing code on the server like some SQL developers I want to hang. And so, you know.
We don't really hang developers.
No, I don't hang them, but, you know, it does go in through my mind occasionally. So, you know, they used to take about 2 weeks for them to go through this process. And multiple people were involved in this process. And, you know, it was a completely manual process, highly prone to error. So once we had implemented our DF solution to them, which was just so you understand what technology we're talking about here, we're simply talking about build definitions, continuous integration, build definitions, with a extensive Windows workflow implementation around the build. So this is what does all this deployment stuff, and you know, knows how to get stuff out to production quick. So,
and there was also the web service wrapper basically around TFS. So we were basically having multiple applications that could speak through this lollipop stand and get at TFS, implement work or build that would provide our deployment capabilities.
right. So it just shows you this stuff's all in 2012. You could implement this today. And you know, again, one person has to hit go. It's fully automated, and you know, the throughput improvement is quite extensive. So, in terms of cost, you know, this could be opportunity cost, it'd be real money cost. In their case, this is real money cost because they outsource their release management team. So, then this is a very conservative estimate in their case, $6,000 a deployment. And that's assuming that they're costing about $50 an hour and that they're using 1.5 resistors, which I know it's about 3 times that. So then what happened in the futures, now we got it down to where it's $25 per deployment, and that it happens, you know, again, same assumptions, but just taking the same amount of time. So what does that mean? We've killed one impediment, one major problem in that whole circle, and we're getting 150, and basically we can outpace an entire year's productivity in just 2 days. So what you've seen today through all these demonstrations that have been going on is really what Visual Studio's the team has been trying to do is they've been trying to attack these impediments and trying to do that. So if that's the money I can save just solving one of those major impediments, think about it. We talked about the context switching, the shelve, unshelve. If it takes you half an hour a day to deal with that on a regular basis, I can start adding that up into real dollars very fast. Can start to justify the return on investment of moving to a 2012 platform pretty fast. So, and the best part about this is the developer experience in this world is it's night and day. The developers are empowered in this. They don't feel crushed when something goes wrong in production. They can roll back fast, calmly look at what went wrong, fix it, roll it back out again, right? When you have this kind of mechanization when it comes to deployments, it breaks down through the ops wall where they traditionally will put roadblocks up, and they're part of the cost problem, right? And so this is really, I just thought that this story would kind of maybe drive home a little bit of why focusing on impediments in your delivery process is such a useful thing And I can tell you as a manager that I can literally watch the difference in the dollars, and I can, most importantly, watch the difference in the attitude of my developers. Because they feel more empowered, there's more autonomy, and they can focus on their work, and they're less. And because I have tools to see that I am forcing context switching on it, I understand the cost of that. So anyway, I thank you very much for listening to us and hanging in there for the end. If you guys have got any questions, fire away. Otherwise, grab us afterwards.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.